Sports Social Podcast Network.
Thanks for choosing this free Anfield Index podcast. If you'd prefer to listen to this or any of our other shows without adverts, then now's the time to check out Anfield Index Pro. With AI Pro, you can supercharge your entire listening experience. You'll not only get all of our podcasts without the ads, but you'll have them far faster with our quick publish feature available exclusively for subscribers. AI Pro also puts you in the heart of our sound studio, with an option to listen to many of our shows live and interact with the podcasters in real time as the shows are recording. Upgrading couldn't be easier. AI Pro is available on all popular podcast platforms, and we have our own apps for Apple and Android. Just head on over to AnfieldIndexPro.com and get started today.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and welcome to another episode of Stat Me Up for Anfield Index. Ladies and gents, everything's big at the moment, isn't it? There's big games, there's cup finals, there's injury news, there's panic, but there's trophies to be won at the same time. And here, as ever, to aid me with all the stats, test him on his homework, see he's been done, it's the Hungarian hipster, as I know him himself, Ben Bocksak. Ben, how are we?
Yeah, good. Missed you last week. How was Lanzarote?
Lanzarote was good. I hope Eddie treated you quite well in my stead.
Yeah, it was good. I enjoyed it. It was a good podcast.
Good stuff. Well, Ben, what the Christ have we got a lot to get through in this period? So we've got to talk injuries. We'll talk stats around injuries. Don't call it a crisis, but we'll see if we will by the end of this. We'll be talking Brentford and everything that happened on Saturday. We'll be talking these two massive games coming up as well. Luton, which almost feels bigger now, doesn't it? Since the City result somehow, as if it could be any bigger, all these games. And if you want big, well, there's just a small matter of a cup final on Sunday. So we will be running through it. We will be getting all Ben's insights and stats. And Ben, probably there only seems one place to start, and it's the negatives, but we've got to get into it. So the injury news. And just to be crystal clear on this, people, because I've seen so many misreports. I know, Ben, you've been sort of stung in the tail by this type of thing before as well, people twisting words or not being clear. So let's be crystal clear. If you look at the reports from renowned journalists like Chris Bascombe, Paul Joyce, Curtis Jones, Diogo Jota are definitely out of the Carabao Cup final. That is what their reports say. Alisson, it's important to say, is not confirmed either way, but it seems to be the suggestion. It's what's inferred, as is mentioned, hopefully back before the international break. So it's natural to infer it's a bit of a gap there. The two to be crystal clear on, because I'm seeing people report all sorts of wild things on this. I'm sure you have, Ben. Darwin Núñez, there was nothing new in their reports, bar the concern that he was obviously substituted on Saturday. Both of those journalists have added nothing new. Both of those journalists do not mention Mohamed Salah in their reports. I've seen people go extreme, and I get it. People are worried, there's fears. That is based on a report from Egypt, but there's nothing in the UK or from renowned UK journalists on that. And Ben's patiently waiting, but I just wanted to go through that, people. I think it's important to confirm, and I'll timestamp this. It's nearly 5:30 on Monday, just in case there is an update and someone says, Dave and Ben, you were lying. So just to be crystal clear on that. I mean, Ben, they're stacking up these injuries, and I almost, it's going to make me sad asking you this question, and when you give me the potential detail, based on the stats and the names, and Christ, Ben, there's a lot of names to consider here as well, who potentially adds up as the biggest miss of this current injury situation, would you say?
It's a tough one because obviously we don't know the extent of Núñez's injury. I might have picked him as number one, but I'm kind of just going on the assumption that, you know, he was fine. Jurgen Klopp didn't seem too worried about him in his sort of post-match after Brentford. So we're just going to assume he'll be okay. Yeah. Maybe not for Luton, but cup final, hopefully he'll be all right. So that doesn't seem like a long-term one, touching wood. So for me, like, obviously there's some great players in there. Alisson, clearly he's been superb this season, and we don't really know when he's going to be back.
Yeah.
Then, Alexander-Arnold again, he's another one who is a huge loss. Probably one of the best players in his position, one of the best players, I think, in the Premier League when he's in form, especially when he's on the ball and he's creating stuff. And he's been so crucial, scoring last-minute winners, equalizers against Manchester City. Like, he's sort of brought out his inner Steven Gerrard at times this season. But for me, I think the biggest blow is Diego Jota. Like, Jota has been phenomenal since Salah has been away. And the whole reason why I think Liverpool have been able to sort of go through this period almost unscathed, barring that Arsenal game, which was terribly unfortunate, was, I think, because of Jota. Like, he became this sort of Salah figure almost, the reliable player who scores goals regularly, and that's backed up by the numbers as well. So he's averaging a goal contribution every 87 minutes in all competitions for Liverpool, which is just the second best for Liverpool behind Salah, who's on crazy numbers at like 76, which 76 minutes is like, what, just a little bit below Kylian Mbappe and Victor Gyökeres, who are like averaging around 68 in their respective leagues. But obviously that's the Portuguese top flight and the French top flight we're talking about. This is the Premier League, and the fact that Salah is doing it in the Premier League is pretty crazy. And then Nunez is just behind Jota as well on 89. So, like, those two are basically guaranteeing you at least one goal contribution every game. So if all three of them are on the pitch, that's, well, the numbers would suggest that's 3 goal contributions at least per game. And then I think the reason why Jota is the biggest miss is, with Alisson, Callahers has come in and he's done really well against Brentford. I thought he made some crucial saves. With Alexander-Arnold, you can have Conor Bradley come in and he's done really well. You've also got other players like Salah, for example, and Dominic Szoboszlai, who should be back soon, who can sort of mitigate the creativity that Liverpool are missing when Alexander-Arnold is on the pitch. However, with Jota, I think like the drop-off between Nunez, Jota and Salah in terms of their goal contributions is quite big. So I think after Nunez, Gakpo is the 4th most productive Liverpool striker, but he's averaging like over 100. So averaging a goal contribution every 100, like 120 or 140 minutes, around that. And Diaz is the same. So, like, that's about a 50, 60-minute drop-off in productivity. And that's quite a big gap, especially when you're trying to compete for the Premier League title and all these competitions. So for me, Jota's got to be the biggest loss out of all the injuries.
Are you that person who has everything? The coolest merch and those must-have fan threads? Well, over at our Anfield Index shop, we've gone that extra mile when it comes to pimping up your Liverpool collection. From our popular range of bespoke design t-shirts, sweaters, hoodies and hats, to our signature edition mugs, prints and coasters, all provided with fast worldwide shipping. We have something for every red. We also stock official LFC merchandise and are licensed with the Premier League and UEFA to sell official iron-on shirt badges and sleeve patches. As a listener to this podcast, you can get 10% off everything with coupon code AIPRO10. Just head over to AnfieldIndex.shop or find us on Etsy by searching for Anfield Index.
Yeah, the second most productive player in the squad, the second top goal scorer. And I know, and Darwin Núñez will have to see, like you said, but there was that Opta stat. See, I do my homework as well, Ben. I know in 2024 that Jota and Núñez are the most productive sort of players in that sense in the Premier League because they're both on 9 goal contributions, as they call it now, isn't it, with goals and assists. So Yeah, we will have to hope one is good and one is set to be. Well, we'll find out soon enough, won't we, in that regard? So, I mean, I looked at this and people are almost now, like we could do, building an injured 11. We could literally put together that good a team from the players that are injured. It's actually scary. Stats wise, I'm struggling to remember it, although you may well correct me on this one. Have we had an injury crisis, anything like this at all?
Well, I think we've been having an injury crisis all season, or it feels like we've been on the brink of it. Last season was pretty bad as well. I think that was a point when, like pretty much half the team was missing as well. So I think it's just sort of common nowadays with Liverpool and with all top teams, really. Like, if you look at Brentford, who we faced, they were missing a lot of players. Chelsea has been missing a lot of players. Tottenham as well. Like, I think the only one who's really gone unscathed is Arsenal. I think their injury crisis has been maybe like one or two players missing, and I've seen their fans moaning online. But yeah, certainly, I don't think, I think given the demands and all the competitions that Liverpool are competing in, it is sort of to be expected that you're going to have players pulling through muscle injuries. And obviously with Diogo Jota, that is just really unfortunate, but the intensity that Liverpool play with, that is something that could happen as well. A clash like that, and obviously hopefully the extent of that injury is not too serious. But I think even though Liverpool doesn't have the biggest squad, what Jurgen Klopp has done really well this season is every single time there's been an injury crisis or there's been a key player missing out, we've had players come in and step up. And I do think, even though there's a lot of players missing, there's still a lot of quality in the squad. And, some players might even surprise us. Like, when McAllister was injured, we were worried, like, who's going to play the number 6 at that point. Wataru Endo hadn't quite proven himself, and then Endo came in December and probably one of the best players. And that was the same with Alexander-Arnold, and Conor Bradley came in, got 2 assists and scored against Chelsea, and I think certainly silenced everyone. And I think even against Brentford, we saw Cody Gakpo put in one of his best performances, I think, in the Premier League recently. Getting a goal and an assist, and Gravenberch sort of stepped up as well. So we're seeing it already, and I think I'm optimistic that there's going to be players who will surprise us, because it is still a quality squad and there's a lot of good players in there, and there's also a lot of talent still in the academy who we haven't seen as much of yet, but who are doing some really good stuff. And this is an opportunity for them. I think for example, Michael Owen would have never gotten an opportunity if Robbie Fowler wasn't injured, and then Owen came in and proved himself. And that was the same with Gerrard or Carragher as well. You just got to take your chances. And if I was a young player, I'd be looking forward to this time, because there's a lot of games and there's a lot of opportunity to get medals, and then to become a sort of prove yourself in front of the fans and become a fan favorite.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
I agree. And I don't think they'll start against Luton. I definitely don't think they'll be in the Carabao Cup final team. Squad's probably a stretch, but it would be very little surprise to see a Bobby Clark or a James McConnell get minutes against Luton at some point. I think it'd be a very little surprise because of the situations, especially the lack of options in midfield. And speaking of the game that we kind of alluded to there on Saturday, I mean, great result. You talked about the performance there. One thing I did miss when I was on holiday, I didn't keep an eye, or didn't get to see your normal stats that come through about afterwards or during the game, even at half time. So hit us with the headlines. What were the big stat takeaways from Saturday? Apart from the fact we've got 8 million players injured, what were the positive stats from Saturday?
Yeah, I think I tweeted actually quite a lot, so you missed out on a lot
Oh
of the
man,
tweets. But I think the one that seemed to get everyone's attention was Ryan Gravenberch, and the standout stat for him was the fact that he won the most duels in the game for Liverpool, which he hasn't done often in a Liverpool shirt.
yeah,
He has been doing it recently. He did it in the FA Cup against Norwich as well. And I think the reason why his performance, yes, like against Brentford was so impressive is because he came in the 33rd minute. So, he didn't even play the full 90 and he still won the most duels. But I think overall he was really good on the ball as well. So completed 2 out of his 3 attempted dribbles, which was just behind Luis Diaz in terms of completed dribbles for Liverpool. 1-2 out of his 3 tackles as well. And I think it was just a more sort of all-round performance that we kind of wanted to see from him. And I kind of liked his performance. I thought he was a lot better than maybe some of the other games. I don't think he's been bad or as bad as fans have been sort of making him out to be,
alluding to,
on social media. But like, I think people also forget that he's only 21 years old. He didn't have a proper pre-season with Liverpool, which I think for midfielders is essential in Jurgen Klopp's system. And he's not a starter, so he can't get a proper rhythm of games. He's playing in and out, coming into Europa League, Cup games. It's a sort of like, Curtis Jones, I think, went through a similar phase last season and the season before that, where he showed sort of promise in certain games, and you could see the potential there. But he was just kind of lacking that consistency, and playing regularly obviously helps. And now Gravenberch could get that chance as well, and you never know, if he gets a run of games, he could ease into things and be even better. But I definitely think his performance is worth highlighting against Brentford, because I thought he was one of the better players for Liverpool for sure.
Klopp's talked about that before, hasn't he? Rhythm and players having that. He mentions that in a number of press conferences. He even used examples like Kostas Tsimikas when he first came in after Andy Robbo's injury. It was a bit of a struggle, but he got up to speed. And you kind of get that feeling now with Gravenberch that he is almost, and it's difficult to say, but it's true in simple terms. He's part, if everyone's fit, of that second team, isn't he? Like you mentioned, the Europa, the Carabao, the earlier rounds. That's where he's been featuring. However, it did feel like a good step forward. I think the big thing for a lot of fans with Gravenberch has been, you've got the talent, as you mentioned, the explosion, the acceleration, good in a tight space. It's sometimes, to be honest, the hard work element, the ugly stuff, the duels, the things that you need to improve that's the one thing that, from a pure stats point of view, people have levelled against him, and quite fairly when you've looked at the stats. But it did feel like progress going forward, no doubts about it. And we will need to see a lot more from Ryan, you suspect, in the coming week and further. Mentioned Diaz as well. Anyone else sort of stand out stats-wise from Saturday? Sounds like I missed quite a few tweets, in all honesty.
Hello, I'm here to annoy you. I'm here to annoy you into listening to more of me and more of others on EPL Index. We don't just have the Anfield Index stuff. We've got EPL Index as well, which covers the entirety of the Premier League. And we have 3 podcasts and a whole bunch of really good writing on EPLindex.com. The podcasts are my own two-footed podcast, which is every day at 4 p.m, Monday through Friday, covering the whole league. We have A Tad Predictable, hosted by Tadiwa. You know Tadiwa, he does Anfield Index. He presents A Tad Predictable before every Premier League match week. And then Kevin DeVries and his crew on the EPL Roundtable, they're every week after the Premier League match week. So make sure you listen to everything we're doing on EPL Index and follow us there on Twitter at EPL Index. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, so I think it's become a bit of a cliche, or because he does well every single game, but Wataru Endo definitely deserves a mention because he put in another really good performance, completed the most passes, made the most recoveries in midfield, and I thought he sort of really stood up to the physical challenge of Brentford and never looked out of place. And he's almost becoming sort of like mainstay in the team now. Dare I say, maybe one of the first names on the team sheets at the moment, with given Liverpool's injuries. I also thought the week before, him and McAllister maybe didn't quite get on in those two roles, with the McAllister being more advanced. But in this game, McAllister sort of eased into it, and he was a lot better going forward. And yeah, they sort of definitely got used to each other and playing with each other as well, which was good to see, especially because I think they'll be playing a lot of games now together. Hopefully there's no more injuries. And for me, that kind of works, that system that they have. Maybe in the first game, McAllister sort of had to change his mindset from having that defensive mindset, trying to break up opposition attacks. And he seemed a lot more liberated going forward. And I think Endo as well sort of just settled in really well behind him.
Yeah, because they did get pillared a bit, didn't they? Based on, and again, people talk about sample sizes, which I know we have. They got pillared based on 45 minutes against Burnley and the fact that didn't quite work. And then naturally the Harvey Elliott sub, because Trent comes off and, Jones goes to right back, and people write that off completely. But actually, as you say now, Endo and McAllister are senior midfielders. They are going to be absolutely crucial, whether that's part of a double pivot in the three. However, they are absolutely essential to what we're doing. And I know you love a bit of Endo propaganda as well, so it was good to get that in at the same time. And moving into this week, Ben, Christ, what a week. I mean, I want to talk Luton first of all, because that's as big a game for me as the cup final. I don't like when people go, I'd rather trade one. And you're like, let's look at both of them individually. Lazy analysis would just say, if you watch Luton at a glance, they're the team that punts it forward. So you play our tallest team you possibly can and things like that. That's maybe what a lazy analysis would say. However, you might tell me from a stats perspective, there is credence to that and the way they play. I mean, Luton threat-wise, what are the stats telling us?
I mean, I'd love to say you're wrong. And no, they play really lovely short passes, tiki-taka football. But no, they are one of the most direct teams in the Premier League. And I don't blame them. They don't really have the squad to play nice football. You got to play to your strengths. But just looking at the numbers, they've attempted the third most long balls in the Premier League, actually behind Liverpool, who are in second, and then Fulham's top. So that's kind of interesting. They've attempted the most crosses in the Premier League out of anyone. So they just really do like to put in a high volume of crosses. I think they don't complete all of the crosses as well. They only rank 7th for completed crosses into the penalty area, which might be a bit of a surprise. So, then they're not that effective in that area. What they are really good at as well is they score a lot of rebounds, so they're really quick to react to chances. So there's a stat on FBref which measures teams scoring from shooting situations. So one shot happening and then another shot happening, and Luton actually have scored the most goals from those situations in the Premier League. So that's something I think to keep an eye on in terms of, they tend to try. I've seen some of their goals have shots from long range, and then their strikers will try to react and get goals in the penalty area. So I think if I was Konate or Van Dijk, I'd keep an eye on the likes of Carlton Morris and players like that, because that's something they're good at. And I think another thing that probably doesn't surprise you is that they're the fourth team who have scored the most goals from dead ball situations. Only Wolves, West Ham. Sorry, they're the fifth. Only Wolves, West Ham, and Arsenal and Tottenham have scored more from dead ball situations. obviously, I think Arsenal and Tottenham rank quite high because they've had a lot of penalties, and penalties are included in that metric. But Wolves, West Ham, and Luton, most of their goals are coming from set pieces, so corners or free kicks, not as many penalties. Yeah, and they've also won the most aerial duels in the Premier League. So again, another stat which kind of is aligned with your analysis. But look, I think, like, they are a dangerous team, and I think you're right. Like, people tend to underestimate them, and I was looking at their numbers, and they haven't really been battered yet this season, apart from the first two games of the season when Brighton and Chelsea beat them heavily by more than 2 goals. They haven't lost by more than 2 goals since. All their games have been really tight. Most of their games against the big teams have been really tight as well, like 1-goal margins. I think they're kind of well set up to play against the bigger teams. And I think as well, like, there's a misconception at the moment that they're better at home than away from home. And I was sort of looking at the last 8 points that they've picked up this season, and 5 of those have actually come away from home rather than at home.
Wow.
So I don't think we quite have that security of, like, it was tough at their place, but now obviously Anfield is a huge advantage, but you know what I mean? Like, they are still a threat away from home, and I think people tend to underestimate that. Like, there is that common conception that they're really good at home, whereas actually, no, recently they've been quite good away from home as well.
It's interesting, isn't it? So called it lazy analysis at the start of my question, but actually the stats with crosses, and we even saw it against United. Doherty, Ogbene, I think from the wings, put a lot of balls in. There is threats there. Carlton Morris, I can't remember his name, but they also have, I think, a 6'7" forward who's got quite a few goals as well. They're going to be looking for knockdowns, second balls, threats. And yeah, the other side of the lazy analysis would be they'll get all their points at Kenilworth Road and they'll give up. But actually, probably in a bad way at the same time, that is not the true story as well. I mean, they have been, as you mentioned, a bit unlucky. You think of all their games that we've seen this season, Luton, it's like United lost by a goal. Arsenal got a last-minute winner. Even City there only won 2-1, didn't they? It's been really tight. I mean, stats-wise, have we got any real... Because it might be you're going to tell me we've not played Luton since, well, people bring up results and say we haven't won there for 12 years. I'm always intrigued when people do that when we haven't actually played them for 12 years. It feels a bit misleading in true context. But what are we talking stats-wise with Luton? Is there a history we can base anything on at all?
I couldn't... Obviously, there's not much of a history between the two teams. So I think it's just unfair to sort of judge anything on that. But yeah, I think for me, I was mostly looking at recent times because I think I'm just double checking, but the last time we played Luton before this season was almost 15 years ago. So it's hard to sort of take any analysis from that. But like, I think if I am correct, I don't think they've ever won a game at Anfield. So they've never won a game at Anfield. So it would be historic for them to get a result. And I think it would be the shock of the Premier League, really, if they did get 3 points at Anfield. It should be a comfortable victory for Liverpool. It should be 3 points. But
it should,
the point I was trying to get across is, like, it's not going to be easy. Obviously, Luton will have had less of a rest, so that plays in Liverpool's hands. The injuries obviously don't, but I think even without those key players, Liverpool should have more than enough. And it helps when you've got Konate and Van Dijk, who are 2 of the best players when it comes to winning aerial duels in the Premier League. So that sort of helps mitigate Luton's threat from set pieces and from those situations. And, if their not fit, or if something happens, you also got Kwanzaa, who is again, I think if you look at sort of under 25 players who've played at least 350 minutes, Kwanzaa ranks top for centre backs for aerial dual success rate as well. So you've got players there who can handle that threat, and I think Liverpool should win.
I don't need a VPN. I've got nothing to hide. This is what I used to tell myself before I hooked up with LibertyShield.com. Not only is my home internet now fully encrypted, but I can now access all the websites I want, whenever I want, and do so from absolutely anywhere. As a Liverpool fan, I love to know I can now watch every match, regardless of whether it's on UK TV or not. My Liberty Shield VPN makes sure nothing is blocked and guarantees me super fast streaming speed throughout that match. You can get connected right now with their software package, which includes a 48-hour no-obligation free trial and instant access to their apps for Apple, Android, Fire TV, PC, Mac and Android TV. Or go a step further like I have and get one of their pre-configured VPN routers. These small but powerful devices allow you to easily connect every device in your home to VPN, making it the perfect solution for smart TVs, Mag boxes and games consoles. Visit LibertyShield.com today and use coupon code AIVPN25 to get 25% off at checkout.
Should win. Well, listen, we'll take a stuffy 1-0 as long as no one's injured. That's the big thing. Wouldn't be surprised, like you said, for Jarell Quansah to possibly come in. Also, because of the nature of everything that's going on, it wouldn't be a surprise to see Joe Gomez come in some form for his tie as well. That would be of little surprise. After Luton, there's only the small matter of a cup final, Ben. And I mean, Christ, when it just seems that whenever there's a domestic cup final, there's an unwritten law now that we're going to play Chelsea, isn't there? It was the nearly quadruple season. We played them twice. So the third visit in a row at Wembley that Chelsea are the opposition seems absolutely crazy. But hey-ho, it is what it is. I mean, the Carabao Cup final a couple of years ago, I mean, so much I remember it was a 0-0. I was at that game, but Christ, so much happened more than anything for a 0-0. What were the key stats from last time we played Chelsea in a Carabao Cup final?
I mean, it was a crazy game. Like, I remember the XG, which I just looked back as well. Like, so Chelsea had an XG of 2.0 in that game, in a 0-0 game, and Liverpool had an XG of 2.40.
Wow.
So on paper, I think it was one of the most entertaining sort of cup finals that ended at 0-0. And then there was the added entertainment of the penalty shootout, which this was the final that went to sort of like 10, 11 players.
Crazy.
The FA Cup was less entertaining in the shootouts anyway. But yeah, it had everything really. And obviously Kelleher was the hero in that game. And it looks like he's going to get the chance to be the hero again in this one as well. So, yeah, I mean, even though it only happened 2 years ago, it feels like the Chelsea that we're facing now is completely different to the Chelsea that we faced. Like at the time, they were European champions, weren't they? Or
True.
They had that squad, and they seemed a lot stronger than they are now. Although I do think they've still got a lot of threat about them. Historically, as well, I've kind of found it interesting that by the way, I'm not counting the Super Cup and the Community Shield as cup finals, but in the 21st century, we've actually haven't beaten Chelsea in a cup final in open play.
Wow.
Every single time we've beaten them, it's been through penalty shootouts. Yeah, and then obviously there's been a few disappointments as well when we've lost, but most of the times we actually have won. It's just happened through penalty shootouts rather than the other way around. But I mean, the most egregious one that still kind of lives in my memory is the 2011-2012 final at Wembley as well. And I'm still convinced, if VAR and if
Andy Carroll's
goal
header,
line technology existed, that would have been a cup final to remember for Liverpool, because I think we were 2-0 down, and that Carroll's goal, which wasn't given as a goal, would have made it 2-2, and then anything could have happened. You never know, we might have beaten them in a penalty shootout again, as we tend to do. But yeah, it's an interesting one. I think we're playing them at an interesting time as well, because it feels like they've kind of got a little bit of confidence getting that draw at City, and key players are coming back, and Kunku is one of those who could be fit enough to start the final, and I think he's a big threat because he was really good for Leipzig. And the one thing that Chelsea struggle with this season is putting their chances away. They create a lot of chances, but they can't sort of finish, and Kunku is that player who can put his chances away, and he's going to be, I think, their main threat if he starts.
Yeah, it's a weird one, Chelsea, that like you say, I mean, I did a bit of digging on the stats, and like they have had success against us, but you have to go back to Rafa Benitez's opening season, 2005, when they won 3-2 in the Carabao Cup final in extra time. But obviously that was the Istanbul year as well, so we well and truly got revenge. But yeah, like you mentioned as well, they had the 2011, the both times in a couple of years ago as well, but it seems to be, on paper, if it goes to extra time, doesn't suggest it's the worst thing for Liverpool, as many may think. I mean, threat-wise, because you alluded to it, it's completely right. If we'd been talking about this game a couple of weeks ago, we'd have been, they've just lost to Wolves at home. These are hopeless. Like, Pochettino's probably about to be sacked any second. And now you fast forward a couple of weeks and you're thinking, well, we've got injuries galore, so that's the first thing. Chelsea, annoyingly, and I mean annoyingly, are just starting to find a bit of form, as you alluded to. They beat Palace, didn't they? 3-1. And they got a point at the Etihad and 4 at the back that they played there. So they're having a better time, unfortunately, getting players back from injury and finding form. Who are their biggest threats stat-wise, though? What do the stats tell us we need to be like keeping an eye on for Sunday?
I mean, it's a double-edged sword when you say annoyingly, because I wasn't annoyed about the City result, that they were getting back to form. I was expecting nothing from that game, and I was quite pleased with the way Chelsea played then. But obviously, Nkunku, he's got very little stats in the Premier League.
Yeah.
In the Bundesliga, he was the most productive player, both in terms of goals and assists last season. And I think if he is fully fit to start this game, he's going to be their main threat. Cole Palmer as well. He's one of the most productive under 21 players, but one of the most productive players overall in the Premier League. So he's a threat as well. And the stats kind of show, as I said, their XG is among the top sort of 2-3 teams in the Premier League right now. They've created, again, top 5 for chances created in the Premier League. So they create a lot of chances, they just can't put them away. And they also concede a lot of goals. So for I think they've scored maybe 41 goals, but they've conceded 40. Or it might be the other way around. It might be 41 goals conceded and 40 goals scored or something like that. So that is a lot for Chelsea to concede in this season, especially growing up. And I was accustomed to Jose Mourinho not even conceding 20 in a season. The fact that they're already on 40 is huge. And it is the sort of like what a mid-table club would be at this point of the season, which is what they essentially are in the Premier League right now and based on their form. And I think we saw that at Anfield as well. Like, it wasn't a 4-1 game. Like, there was a lot of that Chelsea had chances, but they just didn't give them away, especially early on in the game. And I think Liverpool it got so much joy from how vulnerable they were defensively, because they do leave a lot of gaps and they do leave a lot of spaces. And that worked in our favour, and obviously worked in Conor Bradley's favour a lot of the times because he got so much space. And I think that's why I'm kind of, yes, there's a lot of injuries. Yes, it's a cup final. Yes, Chelsea will turn up and they'll be better than they were at Anfield. And they've got key players coming back as well. But I don't know. I still think they will leave gaps for Liverpool to exploit. And as long as you have just one of Salah or Nunez, they're going to get opportunities, and eventually they will take those opportunities as well. But even Diaz and Gakpo, they'll have chances, and I think, yeah, based on that, I'm not too worried. If anything, I'm more concerned about this Luton game, to be fair. I think it's got more potential being a banana skin just because, it's midweek, it's in between a tough away fixture, which ended up not being so tough, but it's also ahead of a big final for Liverpool. And, I don't know, sometimes weird things can happen in that period that you don't always expect.
I'd agree. I mean, the two games, and we've got to separate them, but it does feel that if you win Luton by hook or by crook and there's no injuries, you go well into the Carabao Cup final. And who knows, you may, and I'm saying may, just have a few more players available. But all that is to come. Ben, as ever, thank you for the insight. Thank you for the updates. You did absolutely zero to allay my fears around Luton and what they'll bring, but we will have to see. And next time we're talking as well, Ben, hopefully it's still top of the league and with another digit on the trophy wall. So all it leaves me to say, mate, is thanks as ever for the insight and the stats. Much appreciated. Yeah,
enjoyed it. And sorry, apologies about Luton and not getting your hopes up. But hopefully, fingers crossed, next week we'll be back talking about a cup win and Liverpool still very much on top of the Premier League and on course for the title as well.
With a few players back, that is all you can ask for as well. So, ladies and gents, for another week, that was Stat Me Up at Anfield Index.
We hope you enjoyed listening to this Anfield Index show. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel so future podcasts find their way to your device automatically. There's nothing quite like fan engagement, and we'd love to know what you think of anything discussed on this show. The best way to get in touch is over on our free Discord community, where both podcasters and listeners debate the hottest LFC topics 24/7. Sign up free now at anfieldindex.com/Discord. You won't regret it. You can also follow us on Twitter at Anfield Index and find us on Facebook by searching for Anfield Index. Oh, and before you go, we'd love it if you could leave us a 5-star review on your favourite podcast app. It only takes a couple of seconds, and it means the world to the people who create these free shows.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
Ohio, ready for some quick mental health facts? Let's go. Nearly 2 million Ohioans live with a mental health condition. In the U.S., more than 50% of people will be diagnosed with a mental illness in their lifetime. Depression is a leading cause of disability worldwide. So why are some of us still stigmatizing people living with a mental health condition when we know all of this? Let's listen to the facts and beat the stigma. Ohio, challenge what you know about mental health at beatthestigma.org.